I'm Stephanie with Baby Lock, and I'm so excited! We're in this third video of a series on hemming formal wear. If you haven't watched the first two videos, watch those first because they're really important. So before we get started, let me show you what the stitch is going to look like that we're going to use on this hem. This is a 3-thread overlock narrow hem. It's easy and it's professional looking and you can't tell the difference. All right, so now I stitched this in a dark blue thread so you can kind of see. Let me switch over. I've done this on a chiffon and a satin, so it's very versatile. You can use it on several different types of fabric. You can use it on taffeta. You can look on the back side, it looks exactly the same. And let me switch it over, and if you look at this side, I've done it with the same color thread. All right, so here's chiffon. And here's my satin with the same color thread, and you can just barely see that. And it looks very nice, professional. It cuts it off and rolls it up under. So real quickly at the sewing machine, this is the part of the hem that we had cut off, and in cutting that off, we cut off our back stitch, our reinforced stitch. So you'll notice if this is left unchecked that your seams are going to start falling apart, which will cause a problem when we're doing the rolled hem at the serger. All right, so we just need to doctor up all of these seams. Just take it to the sewing machine and put a little back stitch in the end there. My needle's in the center, and I'm going to stitch a straight stitch over that current seam. And I'm going to do that with all of the remaining seams on the lining and the outer layer. So it took a minute, but I have all of my seams reinforced, and before this frays anymore, let's take it over to the serger. All right, so I have it set up for a 3-thread overlock narrow hem, all right, and that's a rolled hem, so we're gonna have it on the rolled setting. So this is one of my favorite ways to hem formal wear, and we're going to do all 3 layers the same, the 2 layers of lining and the chiffon outer layer, and you're gonna see just how pretty this is, and it's really easy too, which is awesome. All right, so we are going to start with the pretty side up, so all of our seams are underneath the fabric. I have my needle raised, and I'm going to lift my foot, slide my fabric under there to where it's nice and even and flat. And then I like to watch, okay, you have your upper blade and your lower blade, and you'll need to find a spot on your machine to line that fabric up to where it's just barely skimming all these little hairs off, okay? So we're not cutting very much, if anything, off of the chiffon, the outer layer, all right? So we're just going to run it through. Okay, a couple things I wanted to mention. First of all, make sure you practice on your extra fabric before you run your real fabric through. And then if you feel like you're missing your fabric, you can always adjust your stitch width. Okay, so that will take a bigger chunk, all right? If you feel like this stitch is stretching your fabric out, then what you can do is move your differential feed up to just barely gather the fabric. So if it's pulling it, then you want to gather it up just a little bit so that it lets it lay. Now, if you notice that it's gathering your fabric, then you can take this down one to where it reverses that effect. It's going to stretch it. It won't really stretch it, but if you see a gathering effect, then you can move it down. Typically, you shouldn't have a problem, but different fabrics work different ways. So I'm almost at the end here, and what we're going to do is just keep that blade right along that edge and then clip that off. We're going to taper into and off of your beginning stitch. All right. It's very easy. So just make sure you don't clip off your thread there. Okay, so I've overlapped about an inch and my needle is up. I'm gonna lift my foot up, draw all of the fabric to the back to where I'm not stitching on the fabric anymore, and then continue on creating that tail, that serger thread tail. Okay, we can clip that off. And then I typically like to just put a little bit of fray check on that end and clip that excess off, okay? All right, so if you look at this, it's very pretty. And typically sergers can all create a 3-thread narrow hem. However, they're not created equal. And what I would recommend is if you are looking for a serger to do this type of stitch is take some fabric like this, maybe chiffon, to your local retailer and run that through to see the stitch quality that you're getting. All right, so now we're going to do the 2 layers of lining exactly the same way as the chiffon. And just a side note really quickly, your seams are going to be facing down. Your chiffon had tiny little seam allowances. You just want to pay attention and make sure that these stay flat. Like for instance, you don't want one to kind of drag over to there. All right, so just make sure that they stay flat every time you cross over a seam. So you can probably see why that is my favorite method of hemming. It's pretty hard to tell that it was hemmed differently from how it was manufactured. As long as I can find a great color match, and a good rule of thumb, if you can't find exact, go slightly darker, because a lighter thread tends to look faded and old. So there you go, an easy way to hem a chiffon evening gown. There are actually several other ways to hem evening gowns for different fabrics, styles, and lengths. And if you only have a sewing machine, you can hem an evening gown as well. Make sure to check out my whole class over at sewathomeclasses.com.